Hey there, CPO here, and in this video, I'm replacing my sway bar. That's right, not just the sway bar links, but the entire sway bar, and I'm doing it with a Jeep sway bar. Let me show you. All right guys, this is a Jeep Rubicon factory sway bar. Now if you know anything about me and my build, you'll know that this is not a Rubicon. So why the heck am I putting a Rubicon sway bar? Well, because I want to be able to disconnect fully with the push of a button. And what allows me to do that is this guy here, which I'll show you here in a little bit more detail. This is from Team Tech Off-Road, and this allows me to activate the disconnect from the inside of the Jeep using my air compressor. So anyway, I'm gonna be replacing the sway bar and the links. Why am I doing this? Well, let me tell you, there's a couple reasons. So besides the fact that I want to be lazy and disconnect the sway bar from inside the Jeep, you know, I'm getting tired of getting out and crawling on the ground, trying to get the Jeep perfectly level while I reconnect sway bar links. So yeah, I'm taking the easy way out. But one thing I can say for sure is I'm not a huge fan of these Steinjager disconnects. They make a lot of noise. But just to kind of show you before I take this thing down, same thing over here. And when I hit bumps, they rattle a lot. So I'm tired of that. The reason I went with those Steinjagers is because I had pretty limited clearance down here on the passenger side. So I figure if I can go to a Rubicon sway bar that I can just leave connected, clearance is no longer an issue there, and I can be lazy and use that air compressor to do all the work for me. Yeah, that's a bonus. Shut up, bird! So a lot of people don't fully understand how the Rubicon sway bar system works. It's called a smart bar or electronic sway bar or an electronic torsion bar. But what it is basically is it's got two gears in here, and I'll put some pictures up that I found for you to show the inside of this. It's got two gears that are sort of connected by a collar, and whenever it's connected, this acts as one big single piece. However, when you disconnect, in this case, I'm going to use an air actuator from Team Tech Off-Road, then that collar will separate those two gears, and these will move independently of one another, completely 100% disconnected.
TTO sway bar disconnect, Rubicon sway bar, removed motor, added pneumatics. Here we just have an air tank, which is set to less than 60 psi, and we are locked. We are unlocked. We are locked.
This is 100% completely two separate components when in a disconnected state. So other than getting as much flex out of your links as you can, there's really not a limitation because of this. And one of the ways I'm ensuring that I get as much articulation out of the links as I can is I'm going with these JKS adjustable sway bar links for the Rubicon. Now these are not disconnects, but they are high misalignment ends, which means first of all, they're adjustable so I can get the exact height, and I'll show you how I do that on the install. But I can get as much flex as possible out of this system using these JKS links. So I'll show you the rest of the install components here in just a second, because it's important for you to know exactly what you're going to need. But I do want to say this, even if you have a Rubicon and you have a functional electronic disconnect sway bar, there's a couple of good reasons why you'd still want to convert to this TTO air actuated disconnect. First of all, if you have an air compressor, it's pretty easy to add it into the system, right? You've already got the plumbing there, the hard work is done. It's just now adding in another airline and a switch. But the reason why that would be a good idea is if you're familiar with the Rubicon, you'll know a couple things. Number one, it won't let you disconnect the sway bar unless you're in four-wheel drive. So that means if you get into a situation where you're on a trail, you want to pick up the speed, put it in a two-wheel drive, yeah, you can't run disconnected that way. Number two, above 25 miles an hour, it's going to automatically reconnect for you. So this basically gets rid of all the nanny features, and I can control when I want to be connected or disconnected. Now I want to follow the same safety principles. I don't want to be disconnected on the road. I don't necessarily want to be disconnected on high speeds, but I don't want the vehicle to dictate when that happens. I'd like to be in control. The other thing is the electronic system is known to fail. When it gets muddy or wet, oftentimes the electronic components will mess up. That's a big expense. That's like a $1,200 replacement part. So if you have a sway bar that has a failed electronic actuator, I would seriously consider going this route. If you have an electronic actuator and it hasn't failed yet, I would still consider going this route. And if you don't even have a Rubicon, I would consider going this route and doing like I'm doing. You can do it one of two ways. You can source a Rubicon sway bar takeoff. Somebody took it off to replace it with something else. You can buy them on Craigslist or in local Jeep Club for sale ads and things like that. Some of you have even been so lucky as to get them for free. I am not that lucky. I guess if I was more patient, maybe that would happen. Or you can do what I did, and I just bought a complete Rubicon sway bar with the actuator. It's a little more expensive that way, but the reality of it is it saves me a lot of trouble of sourcing a good sway bar and then adding on the additional air actuation module. But it's all sort of comes to me in a box ready to go. Now ideally, right, it's heavy, so shipping is expensive. So really, they encourage you to find your own Rubicon sway bar and then buy the actuator. But if you're in a bind like me, yeah, just buy the whole setup from them. As a matter of fact, I'll give you a discount code to get free shipping on that, because shipping is what really costs a lot of money. So stay tuned to the end of this video. I'll give you a discount code for free shipping on a complete Rubicon sway bar with the TTO actuator. If you just want the actuator, so you already have a Rubicon sway bar or you're gonna find your own, I'll give you a discount code for that as well, so don't worry. All right, so before I dig into the install, I do want to show you the other components you're going to need to tie this into your air system. So first of all, you're going to need a couple of these push fittings. These are for a 5mm ARB airline, and they're going to screw in directly to the air actuator on the TTO disconnect, and they're also going to screw in to your solenoid. I recommend, as does Team Tech Off-Road, to get an actual ARB solenoid. They have some design features that makes them better for this application. So you're going to need a solenoid, which is probably the most expensive secondary part you're going to end up with, because these aren't that cheap. It's made in Italy, for crying out loud. So two of the connectors to connect your air hose, one solenoid. In my case, I'm getting a T-fitting so that I can tap in an additional air line. And these are cheap, like $5 for, I think, maybe even a couple of them. But I need that to be able to add in a third air line, because I already have two solenoids in use. And then you're going to need some air hose. That's really it, and you can tie this entire system into your existing onboard air setup. Now, if you're not using ARB, obviously do whatever makes the most sense. Oh, and I guess one other thing, you are going to need a switch. So I'm using an S-Tech switch system, and that gives me a sway bar disconnect switch that's going to go right up above the rear view mirror. So if you haven't seen my video on this, I did the unboxing, and I'll be doing the install after I get this sway bar in. All right, let's start knocking this out. All right, the actual removal of the factory sway bar is pretty simple. You can see here, there's these brackets. It's going to be the same. So you're going to have 4 bolts that are holding this up to the frame, and then you've got your 2 bolts that are holding it to the top links, and then you'll have to remove whatever you have connecting your links to the axle side. So let me pull that out. Should be pretty quick and painless, and then we're actually just going to bolt this right back up in the same place. Now I'm doing this without taking the tires off, so I'm getting in here with some wrenches. Obviously, it would be easier just to zip them off with an impact, but go ahead and get in here and disconnect. All right, there's the old link driver side. right, so there's a look at the factory non-Rubicon sway bar next to a factory Rubicon sway bar. Pretty much the same, except for that big beast right there. So it's going to be a direct replacement, so I'm just going to stick it right where I got the other one. All right, so these JKS links are designed to go with the Rubicon sway bar. And they're not disconnects, they're just adjustable links. So you can extend these to whatever length works for your particular build. Now there's two part numbers. One of them is for a larger lift than the other, so make sure you know which part number. I got the one for the larger lift. And you basically can just expand these out until they're the right length and tighten down your jam nut and then install them. But it's never that easy, is it? All right, so if you're using these JKS end links like I am, you're gonna have to drill out more than likely these holes on the end of the sway bar link to accept these 1/2-inch bolts. It may seem like drilling these out with a 1/2-inch bit is easy, but honestly, it's easier just to do what I do and use a Dremel. So I have a buddy, Paul Warren, who runs World Tour Off-Road. He recommends using a Vaseline for these, so I figured, hey, can't hurt. So before I set those into place, I'll lubricate them with Vaseline. Keep it from squeaking. All right, so this one is a little heavier just because it's got the added disconnect function. Not gonna lie. So what I'm gonna do is prop it up on top of that drag link just until I can get things sort of organized and get one of these stabbed through on this side. Okay, now I'll come on the other side and get a second one in there. One thing I do want to point out is I'm using a blue thread locker on this, and these are going to get torqued down to 75 foot-pounds. Now I'll torque these down to 75 foot-pounds. Now we can get those end links on and we'll be done, at least with this part. I'll cover the air compressor integration in the next video. All right, so here's the JKS links. Interesting enough, they want this bushing to be on the outside face of the sway bar, but it's actually, in all the photos, it shows the link to look like this. So I think what I'm gonna do is pop this out and pop that out and basically adjust it so it looks like this, which is how it looks in the photos in the instruction sheet. And that also puts JKS upright. So I think that's how it's gonna go. And then the good news is these are just adjustable. You don't have to do any cutting. You can just adjust them to where they need to be and then set your jam nut. So I'm gonna go ahead and level the sway bar so it's pretty much parallel with the frame. I'm going to take this bolt, stick it through there, and then align. Now keeping in mind I'm on level ground here. Then I'm going to test fit this lower through there. I think that is the length I want them. You want both of the zerks to point forward. just like that. All right, so I'm going to take this other one and do the exact same thing with it. Swap these out. And then now I'm going to adjust it. What I like about these is it means they're adjustable. Should you change your lift dimensions, these can just adjust with, as opposed to those that you cut and you're sort of stuck with it for that period of time. All right, so I'm just using these longer bolts from the top. To get things where they look like they're about the same. All right, those look like they're the same. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and tighten these jam nuts down. Going to hit it with a little thread locker. Let's see, I think I have the right size wrench right here. All right, we'll see if that'll hold. That thread lock should help, but it's pretty tight right there. Oh, and this actually is going to go on. It's going to go on that side. So there we go. Passenger side, driver side. There. Boom. And then it's going to get tightened down just like that. So JKS is saying to torque these to 65 foot-pounds, which is a little bit lower than what the factory bolts are. But because those are specific bushing, I'm going to follow JKS's guidelines. And yeah. All right, now I just need to grease these. All right, and I'm just essentially greasing them until stuff comes out everywhere. So there we go. All right, guys, so that's it. That's the install of the Team Tech Offroad Swaybar, Rubicon Swaybar, and the Swaybar disconnect. Now, if you just buy the disconnect, obviously you're just going to mount that piece on your existing swaybar. It's super easy. But since I bought the entire thing, I ended up exchanging my old swaybar with the new swaybar and then adding in those JKS links. So depending on how much of that you're doing, this could be a super quick, like literally a 20-minute swap, not including installing the airline, which we're going to cover in the next video. But just swapping out the swaybar is really easy. So I took the time to lubricate, swap out those bushings with some better bushings that I currently had, and then add in those additional JKS extended swaybar links. I recommend that. I mean, if you have a Rubicon and you're using stock links, make sure you get the longer ones. A lot of guys, when they do the lift kits, will take the rears and put them on the front. They're longer. In my case, those weren't long enough for my needs. The swaybar is most optimum at the 0 degrees, like frame level, or maybe plus or minus 5. But I like to have it completely parallel with the frame. So because of that, the JKS links were perfect, and as you can see, they're easy to adjust. I didn't have to cut anything. And if I change my lift later, if I add another inch or subtract an inch, it's not that difficult just to readjust those links. So anyway, guys, stay tuned for more of the Team Tech Off-Road install. And until then, thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.